Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's PPMA webinar. The title of today's webinar is Open the Window for Local Government Careers. And I'm sure, just like me, you're really intrigued to think about for your own organisation what's going to make someone want to work in your particular local government. My name is Nisha Porter, and I'm the Head of Organisational Development at the London Borough of Sutton, which is a shared service with Kingston. I'm also a PPMA board member, so I'm really, really pleased to shortly be welcoming Rachael Morris from Penna to discuss how we can recruit, retain staff within our sector. And we'll explore some of those challenges that we're facing and perhaps some things that we can do to overcome them in terms of looking at our employee proposition value. Just before I hand over, what I'd like to do is run through some housekeeping with you today. So if you haven't already, please keep yourself remained on mute. In terms of having your camera on and off, that's entirely up to you. I know today is a bit of a warm day, so you may be fanning yourself, but either way, you won't be featured on the recording, so you don't need to worry about how you're looking today. Any questions that you may have during the session, can I ask that you just pop them in the chat for Rachael, and what we'll do is we'll try our best to be able to respond to them during today's session, which is scheduled for half an hour. So we are due to close at 12:30. And just one more thing, if you haven't already, we have a virtual conference coming up, and we would like as many of you to join us as possible. So please do register for our virtual conference. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rachael. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Nisha. Great introductions and great to be here today, colleagues. Hopefully everything's working well and you'll be able to see me. And I'm going to share my screen in a moment. So just before I start, just a brief introduction about me and my experience. So I am a senior consultant at Penna. I've been with the organisation for 4 months now, and I left behind a 21-year career on your side of the fence in local gov. And I felt like doing something a little bit different, and I loved resourcing, loved recruitment in my HR business partner role in a unitary authority in the East Midlands, and I thought I really liked working with Penna, so I thought I'm going to give it a go. Left what I knew behind, but hopefully that gives me a little bit of a different perspective to Penna. I understand what you're going through, some of the challenges. I felt them and gone through them and cried through them sometimes firsthand. So hopefully what I'll be saying today will be it will resonate with you, hopefully, in terms of some of the pressures that you're going through, and hopefully be able to give you some Penna insight into what we know about some of the challenges and how we can maybe help you. So technology being all well and good, I'm hoping that my screen is now sharing appropriately and you can see that. Nisha, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to talk about opening the window. So the EVP element is your window into your organisation. So let's have a conversation about that today. And I'm hopeful that we will have a chance for a conversation a little bit later through the questions. So I'll try and pace this as quickly but sensibly as possible. So you may have worked with Penna before, you may not have worked with us. Certainly I didn't realise how big the organisation was when I joined. So we're part of a bigger group called the Adecco Group, which is a leading global recruitment company operating in more than 60 countries. Penna has got a 200 plus strong workforce that deals with a heck of a lot of stuff, actually. So you may have heard of us with regards to exec search and interim. That's certainly how I used to work with Penna when I was a HR business partner. Or we used our sourcing team for the kind of 75k and below roles. And we're working with a lot of clients at the moment with challenges in local authorities around some of those kind of planning, finance, legal, building control roles, really, really challenging stuff there. But we've also got a huge business around our attraction and branding and communications, creative, digital content. You can see on the screen, there's loads of stuff on there. We've got our in-house organisational psychologists, and they design assessments for us, which we work with clients on delivering. And we've also got a specific EDI consultancy where we can work with clients to help them around how they achieve their EDI goals and the vision that they want to create. So just before I go on to kind of the key detail, just as a plug really for our Black History Month, event that we've got coming up on our rooftop. It's a prestigious rooftop. I've never been there before. They've not let me up in 4 months. So I think it's a great view around Spitalfields and be able to see Liverpool Street area. So really lovely space and place, and some amazing speakers there on the screen. So I've just popped a link in here, and when you get the slides, if you're interested and you're available, please sign up to that event. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're facing. Now, I've taken a lot of this information from the Local Government Association. They published a workforce survey. So 94% of councils at the moment are experiencing recruitment and retention difficulties. I'm not sure what the other 6% are doing, but certainly that feels like a really huge number of challenges and that you're all experiencing them maybe in the same areas or maybe in different areas. If you add geography and place and maybe what that organisation's going through at the moment. We've got a lot of statutory 114 notices that have gone through. So that obviously also creates some challenges and some differences. But just looking at some of the stats there, you know, significant issues with planning, significant issues with environmental health officers. We know that for those councils that have got children's and adults functions in, we know that that's always a challenge. And respectively, children's are suffering 83% recruitment difficulties and about 73% with retention difficulties for children's social workers. And adults aren't far behind, with 71% of councils saying that they're struggling to recruit. Housing is also, I think, a bit of a pressing issue. So building control and housing roles are also creeping up the agenda. But I want to just take a moment to reflect on how tough life in corporate services are. Sometimes corporate services can be a bit of a kicking part of the organisation, you know, the engine room, running around trying to deliver against the client or customer resident facing departments. So real challenges with finance around having strategic partnering, strategic understanding and helping finance through the organisation, not just that kind of strong level accountancy skills. I think we're asking a lot from our finance people these days. ICT, you'll know, is an issue. The private sector and pay challenges are really, really difficult there. Our lawyers are struggling, and that goes right up to the top. Monitoring officers are also really, really difficult, like hen's teeth. And one of my colleagues did a webinar a couple of weeks ago around the challenge for the monitoring officer of the future. So do check that out if you're interested. And I think recognising, I think we're mostly HROD colleagues on the call today. I don't think I'd ever seen a time where HROD were really, really difficult to find the appropriate level and skill. I think it's a lot's being asked of HROD professionals. Since the pandemic especially, I think our worlds have changed a heck of a lot. And I just wanted to take a moment to reflect that those professions are coming up in the LGA survey as problems with recruitment and retention. And thinking about the use of apprenticeships, we know that that's a great option to bring in entry-level talent and develop people through the organisation. And I'd probably say, you know, certainly from my experience as a local government officer, we were great at bringing apprenticeships at entry level. We got diverse people, we got younger people of all different walks of life. But really, you know, getting those people progressed and through the organisation into some of these, you know, more challenging roles that we're struggling with was quite difficult to kind of see that diversity flush through. So I think, you know, 62% of councils increasing their own probably quite big apprenticeship programmes is also saying something about what's going on. So if you do follow me on LinkedIn, you may have seen some recent polls that I've put on. They're still kind of live at the moment, so we haven't got as many votes as I would expect when they close. But I asked people what they've thought about some of the benefits of working in local government and which ones spring to mind. And I was quite surprised to see supportive environment being as low on the list as it is, because I certainly know from the conversations I've had as a HR business partner previously, and hearing colleague opinion surveys and seeing the information in there, that was quite important. But obviously thinking about it outside, because, you know, people in the private sector also voted on these polls. The key thing was about giving meaning or purpose, which I think, you know, possibly a lot of us on the call today would say that's why we do what we do. So thinking about that emotional connection here, and this just flow through to the conversation today. And then thinking about, so what would a good EVP for local authorities look like? What should we be promoting? And again, thinking about that emotional connection there. The career prospects, environment and well-being, a little bit lower. So thinking about what we are promoting, if we're pushing those, do we need to be doing that? But really looking at that total reward package, both contractually and also what makes your organisation different is important. And that's, you know, total reward package for your internal colleagues and your potential future hires. But how much of your company culture, your values and your diversity and inclusion goals are really overtly on as part of your EVP, on your websites, through your social media? How much of that emotional connection to who you are and what you represent is really prevalent in your EVP? So really thinking about that. Which takes me on to my perspective, and there's theories out there with regards to that emotional level and that emotional connection. So I think we probably all know there is that emotional level connection that we all maybe aspire to have, want to have, are driven to have. But if we think about from an EVP perspective, you know, the pay benefit stuff feels very contractual. It's an expectation effectively, and that makes us competitive. So we could have market supplements, we could have incentives, we could have golden hellos, etc. That brings that competitive edge to what we can offer. But if we move through the triangle around the what the experience is, what the storytelling is, what careers can be offered, what's the psychological safety and support and well-being I can expect as a current colleague or a potential colleague for the future. So what makes your organisation different? And then I changed the language at the top on the left-hand side to say distinctive rather than unique, which was the model that I found. Because after speaking to a couple of my colleagues at Penna, when we're in the public service, a lot of our stuff isn't that unique. We're doing similar things in terms of our outputs and our outcomes and, you know, our purpose and meaning, you know, doing something to give back. So really thinking about what makes you distinctive as a separate local authority to your neighbour around your purpose, your culture, your values, your vision, your people, really make you distinctive, and really then think about that emotional connection to people. That will pull people in. So there's an element, there's a big word in here for me around the attachment. People are attaching themselves strongly to messages that are distinctive, clearly defined, and powerfully expressed. And just some sources here with regards to some research around some stats for you to take away and have a look. I won't go through all of them, but 60% of people are looking to choose a place to work based on their beliefs and values. And we know that generational shifts, you know, we've got 5 generations in the workforce at the moment. That's really challenging and amazing at the same time. But each generation comes with their different thoughts, different beliefs, different values. So really thinking about, you know, if you've got an apprenticeship program that's looking to attract, you know, Gen Z or even Gen Alphas when we get there, it's scary to think that that's the new generation coming through in the next couple of years. What are their beliefs and values, and what are they looking for, and thinking about doing some specific targeting against those messages based on those individuals with their beliefs and values. There's a big piece around passive candidates. So a lot of people are happy at work. Organisations are doing a great thing to keep people there. But actually, how do you get to those passive candidates? How do you utilise those networks of somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that potentially could be really interested if they see a message that really, really calls to them as part of your EVP and as part of your employer brand? And I think there's a big thing there about the number one quoted obstacle is not knowing what it's actually like to work at a company. So how well are you promoting what your current colleagues are saying? How are you saying that? Are you saying that in words? Are you saying that in experiences through videos and the use of social media? And getting your colleagues to share on their own personal platforms what they like about it, what's good for them. One of my colleagues said that they did an internal employer brand with a private sector client, and instead of asking them a staff survey of what they thought, because some people didn't resonate with the written word that they'd written, they said that I didn't write that, that's not how I feel, that's not what I think. So they captured people coming into work and leaving work on video and played it back to the workforce, and there was much more positive connections to, that's me, and yes, I did say that, and it's on video, and yeah, I really do believe that. So just thinking about that, how do you capture what it's like to work at a company, and where you're capturing it might be useful to think about. So a really strong EVP is a single, clear, coherent, credible and powerful idea that really energizes people about their part in your organization's future. What is that hook? How are you going to get them in? And there's a little bit of Gartner research that you may want to have a look up later on about advancing value through uncertain times. So a big piece around we're in such a different place than we were 4 years ago. We were such a different place 2 years ago. Everything is changing, and we need to adapt our EVP to those changing expectations and changing society. So I didn't go to World Employer Branding Day, but here are some trends that my colleagues have picked back up and I'm sharing with you today that hopefully will resonate with some of the things that we've spoken about. So thinking about how do you differentiate yourself through purpose and through character, thinking about those values, thinking about that employer brand, and really testing that last piece about brand equity. Does your brand self-perception, so what you guys think in HR, what your leadership teams think, what your members think, does that really match what everybody else is thinking? And how do you find that out? How do you really understand what is going on for people rather than telling them what maybe you think they think? So really thinking about that differentiation and really bringing the character of the organisation to life. I've mentioned about, some of it starts with people within. You've got, potentially a few hundred or a few thousand people that live and breathe your organisation every day, including you guys on the call. So really think about that employee involvement in employee value propositions and what the future of work looks like, bringing their voices to life, immersing them in what's going on, and thinking about that chief storytelling piece around how do they tell the story about the culture. How do they talk about role modelling and stop describing situations, but really living and breathing it and bringing that style of engagement, that style of content to life? And then there's a big piece around future, around learning, behaviours and mentality, again, feeding through to that. So having people to be more agile, again, less descriptive, more prescriptive. Think about reskilling and experience in stages around that employee life cycle and how career opportunities can grow. The shift from IQ and EQ to learning quotient here, how do we measure some of that, that recognition, prominence around hiring tactics? How are we willing to adapt and grow to new situations? And how are we sharing that? And thinking about that behavioural modelling around will and ability in your job profiles, job descriptions, etc. How does it feel in today's modern world when you're looking at some of those skill profiles? So I'm not giving you a magic wand today at all, but we do have an amazing team of experts here at Penna that can certainly help you in terms of what to do. But actually, let's share some information around how we do it to help you do it. So we do a little bit of a model, and actually I think there's probably a bullet point missing off here around review at the end, because there's something about actually reviewing what we've done, which is really difficult sometimes to take stop, listen, learn what's been going on, and then redo it if it hasn't worked. So really spending some time in that evaluation stage, talking to stakeholders, thinking about testing that perception, that equity piece. Is what you really think what people really think? And how will you know that? How will you get underneath that? How do you develop storytelling in the organisation? How do you gather those current employee conversations? Is it through staff surveys? Is it through videos? Is it through focus groups? Really thinking about who's creating your story. Is it HR and senior leaders? Have you got those opportunities in place where you can get more voices heard? And have a really clear purpose around that, evaluating where you are and where you want to be. A load of stuff about research and knowing your market. So a planning officer will be looking for different things to an apprentice. Finance person and a HR person will also be looking for things that are different. So what is it about your audience that you know? How can you segment it? How can you focus on not all of the issues that you've got to tackle, because I'm sure you haven't got the capacity to do that, but how can you focus some really key things on those key areas of concern and really look to really understand the audience? What kind of conversations are your newest starters in those services? What are they saying? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? And what are they doing as part of that piece? Defining the brand, defining what it is that you want to be famous for. What is that thing that makes this organisation unique in comparison to your local authority neighbour? And really getting under that creative tone and voice. And bringing that expression of life and making it clear what you're there for, and making a plan around it. So thinking about internal and external comms. What do the different audience need, and sticking to that plan, and making sure that is, colleagues are sharing some of that plan through their own social media, for example. It's not just a HR thing. It certainly isn't a HR thing. Actually, it's got to be organisationally driven and agreed from the top right through. And then we'll obviously work, we would work with you around launching a toolkit around a book, for brand assets, how you can use your practical toolkits. You know, if somebody wants to share something on social media, instead of writing why it's great, how can they bring, you know, some of that movement to life in their social media posts? And how can you help individuals who want to do that, who are your advocates, who are maybe your high performers? How can you help them do that really easily than having to maybe reinvent the wheel? Or say things in their own way that is great in one respect, but doesn't necessarily link back to all of the work that you've done around the 5-step model here. And then, as I mentioned, that review piece, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, what could do differently, how can you sample survey people to understand if the work that you did, whether that's with Penna or whether that's with a different organisation, or whether that's just within your own organisation, you know, how do you know that all of that stuff made a difference for you? So I've given you some insights around what's going on that we're hearing from World Employer Day, that what Penna could support you with, but some ideas hopefully to go away and have a think about what does that look like for you, and where to start, I suppose. And I suppose none of you are in your starting position at all. You're not in the starting blocks, you're out the starting blocks, but we know that it's such a challenging time for you. How can you recalibrate some of the great things that you do? Because I would imagine everything that you need is already in your bank or your toolkit. It's just around how do you amplify, how do you turn up the volume on some of the stuff that you've already got to really, really help bring a really inclusive, exciting platform for people to really want to come and work for you. And then also, why would people stay with you, and thinking about those two separate audiences. So I'll attempt to stop sharing my screen now. I think we've got a few minutes for questions, which is great.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So much of what you've said has resonated with me, particularly around the storytelling and being able to be really clear and define what your particular brand is as an organisation. Has most certainly been fruitful in my experience. We currently don't have any questions at the moment, so I'll just give colleagues a few moments if you do want to add any questions in. Rachel, just thinking about your switch from local government to Penna, what are some of the things that have really been noticeable for you?
That's an amazing question. Thank you. I think for me, I was really scared to go into the private sector. I think there's an element of what did that mean for me as a local authority? You know, 21 years since I was, you know, quite young, going into a sector and leaving that comfort blanket was really difficult to let go. And I was really scared about the change. I was really scared about the move. But some of the key things, I think that, you know, I think I've got a significant appreciation for what local authority people do, and bringing that into some of my colleagues in the private sector is amazing. And just having some honest conversations about, you know, it's not as easy as maybe people think. I've certainly worked harder in the last 3 years, as I'm sure you lot have on the call. It's been a really, really tough time. I think there's a lot of great stuff about making that change. And for me, there was a big piece around my north had gone a little bit awry. I kind of wasn't sure what difference I was making. We were really busy. The organisation was in 114 territory. So it's a really, really difficult council with statutory footing. So there were some real challenges there. And I think I got a little bit lost in all of that and wanted to lift my head above the clouds, which is, I've got a couple of people that know me on the call will have heard me say, you know, get my head out of the clouds, lift myself above and think about what I needed to do. And the one thing I would say to my 3-year-ago self would be not necessarily to help me at Penna, but would be to make sure that I'm connecting with other people outside of the local authority area that I lived and breathed, because you can become very insular into what's going on. And networking is amazing, but it's really hard work to be able to fit that in alongside. But I definitely, one of my key lessons, and looking back, I wish somebody had sat me down 3 years ago and said, don't forget about that, because that's really important, that you take innovation, creativity, and just great conversations from people who are doing your kind of pain, living and breathing it every day, but just in a very different way. So hopefully that's given you some insights around kind of what's been going on for me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We do have a comment in the chat. So from Nikki, we have really interesting about taking the videos as people coming in and leaving work. Were these say 2 minutes? Were these loaded on social media?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So they were really quick videos. I think just, tell me about what's great about this organisation. What do you love to do? And if obviously they're leaving at the end of the day, what's been great about the day that you've just had? So how that was played back is that it was put in a montage, a video montage for colleagues to play back. So it was, I think, a few minutes long at their staff conference. So it was played back to them. And I think we're still working with that client. So I'm not entirely sure how that's worked with the external part of the employer brand, but I would imagine they're going to be using that. It's such rich intelligence to have. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how that was played back, very quick succession, edited, played back, and will probably be used for the external market.
Thank you. We have another comment from Leanne. Really useful session, thinking about what we have in our toolkit and how we can promote. Useful in thinking about the different audience and how we need to tailor our EVP and how we ourselves, how we sell ourselves as an organisation. It's given her real food for thought as they're about to embark on a recruitment campaign for a significant amount of roles. Thank you so much for the comments that we've had in the chat. I'm conscious that we are drawing close to our 12:30 deadline. I think what you touched on, Rachel, just thinking about those differences in the networking, I think that that's really quite key for us within local government to consider that shared knowledge across our many different resourcing teams and think about how we can learn from one another. We have just a couple of minutes to go, so I'm going to do one final plug for our virtual conference. Please do register. You should, as members, should have received an invitation to register. So please do go ahead and do that. And Rachel, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for your insight this afternoon. I'm sure many of us will ponder over it over the weekend and be going back to colleagues within our resourcing teams to look at some of our own toolkits and think about how we can maximise them further. Thank you to all of the colleagues that have joined today, and for those of you that will be watching this back. As noted in the chat, we will share the slides and the recording of the session. Thank you all very much and enjoy the weather over the weekend. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Nisha. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.